and welcome to the first interview in my series, Black Women in Corporate America. I am very excited to get this series kicked off, and I have Andrew DeSalvo with me. He is going to be interviewing me today. As I was thinking about prepping for this series and kind of how I wanted to kick this off, I thought it made the most sense for me to be on the chopping block first. So super excited to get started. And as I was thinking about who I wanted to help me share my story, it just kind of first person that came to mind was Andrew. He has been my mentor for going on 3 years now. And I think he knows me pretty well, both personally and professionally. So I'm really excited to get started. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it off to Andrew.
Well, thank you very much. I'm excited to be here for this very first one. But I think, as always, the first question is going to be why? Why now? Why is this the time for you to embark on this journey?
Sure. So I have decided to start doing this now because for those of you who don't know, I am a first-time mother. I had my son August 1st, so we're coming up on a year now. And as I came back from maternity leave, I noticed that my complete work experience kind of like shifted. Like how I got work done was completely different. And the experiences I was having were very different. And I noticed the amount of time that I became more aware of the amount of time that I put into the perception, managing the perception about me at work, and realizing how much of a struggle that was once I got back. So I think I had a bit of that in me before, kind of knowing that I put a little bit of effort into it, but it became increasingly obvious of how much that was taking a toll on my mental health when I got back.
And what are you trying to accomplish with this series? What are your goals and your targets?
Sure. So my goal for this series is first and foremost, my primary goal is that I hope other Black women who watch this feel seen and heard and validated. I also hope that I can provide as much information as possible to help other Black women navigate this really complex space that was not created, right, for us initially, right? So that's really my primary goal. And then anything else that comes out of that is really just kind of a cherry on top. So
how would you describe your own experience as a Black woman in corporate America in your career so far?
So I think it's been, for me, it's been interesting. I think I've had to figure out how to navigate this space and really understand how much of myself I can bring to work, but also still be able to, sustain my lifestyle. So it's definitely been challenging. I won't say it's been easy. I briefly said this earlier, right? Like these corporate spaces were not developed with Black women in mind, right? So I have definitely have been challenged on how to navigate this space and how to not lose myself in the process.
Yeah, so you're talking about your challenges with bringing yourself to work. How authentic do you think you are? Is work Jasmine as compared to, air quotes, real life Jasmine? Like, do you think are you able to get mostly there, somewhat there, almost all the way there?
I'd say somewhat there. Somewhat there for sure. I think every day I work towards relearning in a sense, like relearning how to be in corporate. From a really early age, I was kind of groomed to be another person, essentially, right? Like I had been groomed at a really young age that, like, when you're in work, you need to look, dress, act a certain way. And I am in the process of unlearning those behaviors So that way it becomes easier for other little girls who look like me who didn't have the privilege of learning that early on.
Yeah, do you think that's different for Black women than Black men, or Black women than other minority groups? Is there a definite and disparate change between what you think you need to do in the workplaces versus other groups?
So I've talked, obviously, like I don't live in a silo of Black women. So I know for sure that I've talked to other people of, different demographics, and to some extent, we all experience some version of that. But I really kind of want to challenge that question a bit. Not challenge the question, but I just want to be really clear. I am here representing the Black woman's experience, right? And I am bringing other Black women on to talk about the disparities that we face. This is not to say that other people of different backgrounds don't face maybe similar disparities or have their own version of it. And I highly encourage everyone to advocate for themselves and the things that make them different. That is just not my story, and I do not feel comfortable speaking to other people's experiences. But it does not mean that I'm not willing to listen and learn. So I encourage everyone who's listening to this, who feels like you relate in some way, but with the twist, to use your platform to share your story.
Well, Mark, about 5 minutes in, you challenged my question already.
Right? That's how I do.
Come straight. But who are some other Black women that you look at for source material, right? So I'm sure you have friends and coworkers, but other people out there that you look at as role models, or providing other perspectives for you as you're going to take to this experience?
Yeah, 1,000%. And it's women that you probably wouldn't expect. So I'm a huge fan of Amanda Seales. I think she is phenomenal with all of her flaws. And she puts that on display, and in all her greatness too. And she's like very unapologetic about it. So Amanda Seales is a big one for me. There's a new kind of uprising star that's coming through the like TikTok and Instagram realms. Her name is Jasmine W. And no, I don't like her just because her name is Jasmine, even though I think it's super cool that we share the same name. And then I'm a huge fan of, I don't know if you guys watch this, but if you guys are on Instagram, you got to check out this hashtag called Parking Lot Pimping. Phenomenal. What all these three women do is they're able to share their stories and other Black women's stories unapologetically, and they're able to put it through a medium in a way that's easily consumable. And I really respect their authenticity and the creativeness of their processes.
I've seen on LinkedIn that you've already started sharing some data points and some things around that. So are there also any studies or like large scale projects that you're going to be bringing out and explaining in the series, or is it really going to be more of a one-on-one you with somebody else about their experience?
So a lot of the data that I'm putting out there is based off of a Lean In article that was produced actually 2020. And it's specifically around Black women in corporate. And I think it's very thorough and a very comprehensive piece of material that really talks through Black women's experiences. And like I said, this show is not dedicated to, kind of helping corporate leaders figure out, how to navigate. This is more for Black women, but that piece of, collateral is really key to help corporations kind of understand, what are some tweaks and things that they can do.
One of the things that I thought was the most striking that I didn't know, and I probably should have thought about that, was the fact that only 3 Fortune 500 CEOs ever have been Black women. Ever, right? Yeah, and the demographics don't make any sense mathematically for that. But how does that, do you think, play a role for other people like you that are going through? Is that something that you think is more of a, we can do this and we can overcome that and we can make a step, or does that more feel like it is a push down of, man, it's going to be really difficult to do this because it's been so hard for anybody even to get that level already?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of different perspectives from like women that I've talked, even within my own family. So I am for those who don't know, I'm one of 10. I have a lot of siblings. And even as I talk to my older sisters kind of about these topics, some of us fall where it's really discouraging, right? And you know, there's a perspective out there that's like, listen, this is how I'm going to sustain my life, and I'm going to find happiness and passion and their passion kind of outside of the space, out of the corporate space. And then there's some who are like, you know what, I'm trying to be number 4,
Yeah.
And I respect, let me be very clear, I respect both paths. And I think both are important to kind of the overall success of Black women.
What about you personally, though? Like, how do you feel about that? Where's your thought? Are you thinking more number 4, or are you thinking more, this has been really difficult and it just frustrates me?
How right now in the place that I'm in, I just feel like, I do have like a Christian background, Christian faith. And I feel like right now what I'm being called to do is to be a mirror. And I'm still on my journey of understanding what that means. But I'm really trying to be obedient to what I feel like is driving me right now to do this series. So I don't have answers to that question today. But what I will say is that if I can be a mirror, then I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, I'll call you tomorrow. We'll see what we are.
Yeah.
So that mirror, right? So what is that mirror going to show? What is that mirror going to show these people that are asking about, tell me about corporate America, tell me about being a Black woman? I am a white man, as obvious from people who are watching this, and I can do as much as I can, but I'm making assumptions. You actually provide a real experience. What is that experience like? I know you can't speak for everybody, but what has it been like for you in the corporate positions that you've been in?
So I kind of heard 2 questions there, but let me start off by saying this. One of the things that I really hope that you get from that you get as a reflection is understanding that there is no one way to be a Black woman in corporate. And so it's really important to me to show the variety of different perspectives that come through this experience. Sorry, I lost the second question. You were asking me how
Well, I mean, it's really about, to me, is your experience. So you're showing a mirror to others, right? By asking them to think about things in a way that they haven't thought, or maybe they don't think, but now they will. And so I think about that my own self with hiring I've done or that, but this is really about Black women and the experience that they have. So what do you think that the light is going to show in this mirror for many people?
I think it's okay. And so I know for me personally, actually on Friday, I posted a comment about being the only Black woman in the room. And I think one of the things that'll become really apparent in this series is that feeling of being the only and holding that pressure on your shoulders of, wow, I better act this way, or I better do this thing well, because my actions directly impact the ability for others who look like me to get opportunities. And like, even according to the Lean In study, when it comes to women of color and white women, like, they did a really good job of surveying the group. When it came to questions like that, Black women scored the highest and feeling pressured, like they're, kind of on display. And I think that's a big one that comes through. And then I also think this will probably shed a light on some concrete examples of microaggressions and what those look like. We talk about those holistically a lot, but people tend to struggle a bit on the examples, or afraid to talk about them publicly, because it might be one of your real close friends at work, right? Who've made that, who made that microaggression and may be afraid to talk about it. So hopefully issues like that will come to light.
Yeah, I've never once thought that what I say here will impact anybody else who looks like me. But that's a real thing that you have felt in conference rooms or on meetings and things where, like, if I take a misstep or if I look a certain way or my facial expression does something, and that it would really impact a larger group of people from getting that opportunity.
1,000%. Yes. Just yes. Like, I'm not even, but yes.
Yeah. And then in doing that, I mean, what goes through your head when you're doing that? Are you then thinking about your elocution of like how you say your words? Are you thinking about whether you want to be counter to the larger group opinion? I mean, are you changing your perspective on things because you think it's going to be better for those down the line? You feel like you're losing your sense of self in those?
It's a fight. It's an internal fight every time. For me personally, it's a battle of, do I do what's easy? Well, easiest
Yeah.
for me, because like I said, I had the privilege earlier on, you know, being kind of groomed and conditioned for, interacting with higher ups, who are predominantly white. So for me, sometimes it is a bit easier. It's easier for me to just say, okay, I'm just gonna go in this room. I'm gonna wear my, my outfit, my suit, my corporate suit. I'm gonna straighten my hair. I'm gonna make sure that my word choice is very specific. I might drop like a funny Office reference or something. I do love The Office, though. That's not a joke. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that way I'm relatable, etc. And then there's always that little girl or that thing inside of me that goes, maybe don't drop an Office reference, maybe drop a Martin reference and see how that sticks, right? But yeah, that it. I wish I could say it wasn't a battle that happens often, but it is. Especially because I have had the privilege throughout my career to be the token often, and probably at every place that I've worked at.
Do you feel like a token? I mean, do you feel like you are being something that is being passed around as here is our one Black woman, Jasmine?
I have felt that way often in my career, because I have been in spaces with C leadership, and, and have been the only Black woman in the room. Sometimes the only person in the room under the age of 30. So yeah, I have felt that way a lot in my career.
I think one of the first times I met you was, in fact, when you were the only Black person in the room with lots and lots of leaders. In fact, nearly all of the leaders of our company, and you did a presentation there, and I'll never forget that piece of it. And it was really striking to me to look around the room and see so many people that looked like me, not as handsome as me, but they were there, and realize like, yeah, you were the only one there. But you talked about like wearing your corporate suit, but I want you to expand on that a little bit. Are you physically talking about actual suit outfit? Or are you more talking about your like the persona that you put on, or is it both?
Yes, it's definitely both. I I literally went through a phase where I had like a cream suit, a blue suit, a gray suit, right? And those are like my safe outfits, right? Like
Yeah.
no matter, especially in my previous place of employment, I interacted with lots of different people from different countries, and wasn't 100% sure, like, do they interact with Black people,
Yeah.
in their countries, right? And so I would just try to fit into what I thought would look most American,
Yeah.
whatever the hell that means. But in my head, that made sense. And maybe there are other people out there who get what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, but I also think about the actual attire, right? I mean, is it different or difficult for you to think about what to wear every day more so than what a typical, I think women and men clearly have different things, but as a Black woman, are there additional pressures on there as well?
Yeah, and Black women have been dealing with this since grade school, right? Like if you look at the number of like referrals and written up for young Black women about what they wear, I mean, it's compared to other young ladies, it's insane. And it has nothing to do with the fact that like Black women are more design or like wear more suggestive things or anything like that. I mean, a lot of women of color are curvy, right? And it definitely plays a part in like what you get up and look like in the morning, and like and the attention that like, where do you want the attention, where do you want the focus to be?
I think secondarily, and it's maybe somewhat weird for me to say this as somebody who has none, but what about your hair? I mean, I think your hair has got to be a significant thing to think about as well every day, because it is not
It's not straight. And it's not like you're tamed. Yeah. It's so ridiculous to say, but my hair has 1,000% been a conscious decision that I have made to, like, even I changed my LinkedIn profile picture recently to my natural curly hair instead of my, my straight ponytail. And it has a lot to do with the fact, and even I even made this decision early on when I used to recruit, like a long time. Well, anytime I recruit, I always wear my hair curly because I just keep thinking like there might be a Black woman out there who doesn't know if she can wear her hair curly to work. So I do my best to try to, as hard as it is to put all the stuff in my product in my hair to make it do this, I do make that conscious effort. And there's like a whole history behind Black women and their hair in the corporate spaces. And that even like connects down to the T of like how you're able to provide for your family. And I know that sounds crazy, like what should your hair have anything to do with that? But when you think about the relaxer and that the way that was marketed, years ago when Madam C.J. Walker put that out there, was all about like they would go around saying like, I got this promotion at work, and it's all due to my relaxer. And like, as silly as that sounds, I was like very accurate and very large part of like Black women making strides in their work environment.
I can't speak much on hair. But as I think about the things that you're talking about, it's a lot about appearance, right? And another word for appearance, I think that is frequently used is presence. And in particular, you and I have had some conversation. I know you're very passionate about a term called executive presence. Yep. And it's about a lot of different things. I'd like you to define that, because I think it's incorrectly used. People think about it's a theory, but there's really actually hardcore principles behind it. So can you define executive presence a little bit and then talk about really what that means in the office and the workspace?
Sure. So so I'm glad that you said the fact people use this phrase all the time and incorrectly. Executive, like I think people think executive presence is like just this word with no meaning. So if you do the digging, there's an exact definition of what executive presence is, and it has to do with your appearance, your communication, and your oh goodness.
Gravitas.
Yeah, and your gravitas. And for Black women, when you break down each of those categories, you hear the battle, right? So let's start with appearance. Like I mentioned earlier, right? Like Black women have been battling what's appropriate for their body types since grade school, right? And maybe even before that. We do not start at the same playing field. Everything from our hair to the way we're shaped. It's a lot more thought that has to go into it. And a lot, and financially, right, there's an impact there because you have to put so much more work into trying to fit this mold of what people have called professional, which, like I have said over and over, the space was not created for us, right? Like with us in mind. So
can I stop you for a second?
Sure.
When you say people have called, I think you really are saying white people have called or executives have called. I mean, tell me if I'm making a mistake there, but that's.
Oh yeah.
I think it's not a specific. It's not like you're doing this for you. It's you're doing this because of that perception that is out there.
Yeah, and so actually, I'm glad you said that. Let me take this back even a step further when it comes to the term executive presence. So executive presence was developed with good intention. It was around, okay, so who are our executives today and what are their common characteristics, right? When you look at that group of people, especially during the time at which this term was created, the majority of that of the executives at the time were white and male. So basically this concept was created around what do these white males have in common, right? And so now that term that was created so many years ago is still being used. It's still being used even though the workforce looks very different. And we're all held to the standard that was not set by a diverse group of people. So when I say things like, us trying to assimilate to, corporate, which was not created for us, I specifically mean like the concept of like professionalism, executive presence, like those phrases were not put together with people of color in mind. So it is essentially people of color, and and I'm specifically talking about Black women today, Black women having to assimilate to what those phrases are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really critical to understand a lot of the it's always important to know why. I think that's a critical, that's why I started with asking you in particular that question. But as you get back into defining those three areas, I don't want to lose that. I think it's critical. So we're talking a little bit about appearance.
So I think I beat the appearance one up a bit. So let's talk about communication, right? When I think of communication, what's really funny is that if you look into like what constitutes a good communicator within this definition, a lot of the measurements that are shared are really things that are relative, like, you know, do you not have an accent? I mean, like, that's an actual measurement within this construct that's like, are you a good communicator? Which is completely relative, even here in the States, right? Like if you're from different places, completely different. So communication, and then there's a story about gravitas that I like to share often. So for those of you who don't know what gravitas is, it has a lot to do with like your ability to like to be serious, and kind of carry a presence that's more serious. And that is something especially in a corporate environment, you know, just kind of due to the training that I had early on, that comes a little bit easier to me. But for Black women, it's interesting how gravitas can get you in trouble. And this happened to me early on in my career. So basically there was a group of new hires that came in after me in my career. And I was living in Indiana at the time, and I knew no one there. I was literally there for work. Like my parents weren't there. I had to make all new friends, everything. And anyways, I had done quite a bit of work before this new group came in and had some credentials to my name. And really a few of them just kind of got together and said, you know, this girl takes herself too seriously. And I still remember the fear of when that comment got back to me and how I had to go into like hyper mode to control that narrative, because I was so afraid of the fact that people wouldn't want to work with me, and that I'd be associated as like the angry Black woman or you know, concepts around that. So even within that phrase, right, some of those items within communication and appearance and gravitas, even though, you know, corporate says this is what we want, but when Black women do it, it's like, we want you to do it, but soft. We want you to do it, but with this. And it's just this dynamic of it almost kind of feels like, but do you really?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And how do you combat, right? I mean, you've got years, right? For years and years, this has been decided and this has been the way. And now the corporate space is changing. The CEO numbers may not have changed in a way yet, but at some of the lower levels that it's starting to erupt more. And so what do you think is the disruption in there that can be about this? Is it about attacking perhaps one of those aspects of executive presence and saying that this no longer is actually relevant? Or are there other paths that you think really might make a bigger impact?
So it's a great question that I don't have the answer to. I'll be really transparent with you. I don't have the answer.
How dare you not have the answer?
Yeah, I don't have the answers to that question. And this is probably going to sound a little blunt, but right, like I didn't create this problem.
Yeah.
And with a lot of self discovery and therapy, I have really accepted that who I am, right? Like I am not a problem, and I did not create this problem that like I can't be all that I am in this space. Yeah. So I don't have a solution, and I just don't have a solution.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that
And I don't want the pressure of trying to fix something I didn't break.
Well, one of the things I've heard from you in some of your preparation and just in conversations that we've had has not been about necessarily finding solutions all the time, but it's the mirror show that you were talking about earlier. It's more about getting more perspective out there so that I think there are others who can, because no one person is going to come in here and solve it. They would have done it. There's a lot of smart
Yeah.
people out there that have been thinking about these kind of things. I do think this is going to be more about sharing more of this, and that in itself will actually drive the solution.
I hope so. I hope so. I really, earlier in the interview, you asked me kind of what my goal is. And I think by me keeping my focus on just having a space where Black women can share their stories about corporate, you know, there's going to be an impact out there, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be a ripple effect. And I know this anyways. I don't want to,
Yeah,
fingers crossed, right? Like not trying to, you know, I guess I'm being superstitious, but I think with focusing on that, it'll allow for people who want to lean in and want to understand the opportunities to do something with their privilege.
did you think at all that there might be any backlash to this kind of storytelling? Or was that something that ever crossed your mind about, I am really going on a ledge that is not typical for others who look like me?
Yeah, so one thing, and another reason why I did this first is because I want other Black women to feel safe when they have these conversations with me. It's really important to me. Another statistic that I posted earlier is that, like, you know, 80% of Black moms, they're like the sole breadwinners for their home. Like and that has like a direct impact on their communities and like this is the sustainability of their homes. And I am not, my goal is to not disrupt that for Black women. So I really respect, let me just put it this way. I am going to work at the level at which the Black women that I meet with are ready to share their stories and how, and I am doing my best, especially in this session, to just put it out there.
Yeah.
And not hold back, so that way others maybe feel comfortable to do the same. But I will not pressure another Black woman to do anything that they're not ready to do yet.
Well, the last year plus has been a dramatic shift in how work is completed, with the vast majority of people really working out of their homes or working out of some place that is very close to their homes. Do you think that any of that has carried over, and maybe any difference for an experience for a Black woman at work when you're not actually going into an office maybe as much, or maybe even at all anymore? Is that going to be, think that will carry over beyond and make any kind of changes?
You know, it's so hard. That question is so hard for me because when you look at the statistics that have happened around COVID this past year, and the people who are impacted by COVID, people of color have really suffered the hardest. And then when you look at the amount of people who were laid off during that time, second to Hispanic women were Black women. So my hope is that as we progress, this gets better for Black women. But so far, 2020 and when we were impacted by COVID, it really seemed to really shake up, you know, people of color and, you know, and Black people. We were, you know, disproportionately impacted.
Yeah, I probably phrased that question not very well. I was thinking more along the lines of like the ability to work from home and like that piece. Like, has that changed the experience of being a Black woman in the workplace when you are much more often a box on a screen or a name in an email than you were more frequently when you were a person in an office or at a desk?
Yeah, I hear you. And I think the reason why I brought up that COVID piece is because, like, first, I think for some people, it like their focus is on, especially if you don't have kids, your focus is being that box on the screen, right?
Yeah.
But like for parents, right, like you are the box on the screen with the kid on the side, you know what I'm saying? You are a box on the screen while maybe you have a sick spouse who's dealing with COVID, who can't help out because they can't leave the room, right? And when your race is being disproportionately impacted, it's sometimes being a box on the screen doesn't even matter, because you're literally dealing with so much in your own home. And I will say this, for me personally, when we transitioned to the work from home environment, I never realized how much I appreciated having work at work and home at home.
Yeah.
Especially because if I'm really being honest, I didn't realize all the pressure that I felt at work, and how all that pressure was starting to creep into my home is my safe space. And I've done a really good job to keep this inviting and just a beautiful space for my family. And when work, I want to be clear, my job is not terrible. I'm not trying to put that impression out there, but as a Black woman, there are just things that you go through that, on my car ride home, may be able to wrap it out and get that energy out. But I didn't have that anymore.
Yeah.
So anyways.
Yeah, I think all of us have gone through that, but I would never speak to anyone else, but I do think that what you have created at home, and when things start invading that in there, it is dramatically different than it has been for many people in this year. But I'm excited for you to use this series to get some of that energy with you and whoever you have, with you got your board over here with all your plans, all these things. That will be for people to see later on. But I'm really excited to hear you ask these questions, tell these stories, and get that energy from them, and really disseminate some more of these stats and facts in there, because I think that there's a lot of value that I have seen just in the few short ones you've done. I'm really excited to see more. But I have three final questions for you.
Okay.
I really want you to think about, and these are, you certainly can take these and do whatever you want with them. But what does success look like for you? How do you plan to measure success?
Okay. Yeah, so for this project, I think a lot of moms out there are going to relate to this. Being a mom is a full-time, right? Being a parent is full-time, right? So I'm a full-time parent, I work full-time, and so now I've added on this additional project. And I have outlined kind of from beginning to end, what this looks like. And for me, success for me is just being obedient to getting that accomplished and following through on what I said I was going to do, which is basically sharing a variety of different experiences that Black women go through. And to me, that is enough.
That's plenty. that is plenty. What are you scared?
So what I'm interested to see play out is the impact of the series. That's what I'm most interested in seeing. This is probably the first time I've been this transparent. And I've led quite a few different roles, and I've had similar conversations, but I think I've been a little bit more light about it. This is probably the most transparent I've been. So this might land a little interesting for some people. So I'm interested to see how things play out, but I'm really not fearful though. I think fearful is an interesting word that I'm not experiencing.
That's great. I think you were never scared. It's critical. And then, my last question is what do you want your legacy to be with this?
Yeah. So, what's so funny about that question is that I automatically think about so Oprah talks about her experience with Maya Angelou when she was building her school, and was saying I really think this is going to be my legacy. And then Maya Angelou and all her wisdom goes, you will never know what your legacy is, right? And that makes me think of that. But there's a lot of truth to that, right? You don't know what your legacy is going to be. But what I can say I hope comes out of this is I hope for the Black woman who participated in the series and who watches, I hope you feel seen and heard and validated. I hope you feel like you, gathered some data points to help you navigate this really difficult space. And when I think about how I hope people think about me at the end of this, I just hope people realize that like I genuinely care about equality. And I hope that, you know, people remember their interactions with me, and say, you know what, I really felt heard when I was with her, because that's really important to me. Yeah.
Well, speaking of hope, I do hope that you know that it is more than just Black women who will see this, who will listen to this, and who will learn from this, right? I know that your focus has been strongly in this interview, like you're pointing towards for Black women, by a Black woman, about Black women, right? And all these things, but there's no way that many other people will not also hear this and take things from it.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled to see what you do with this series. I look forward to session 2, session 3, session 4. I think it's going to be awesome. And thank you for letting me, you know, get a little into Jasmine here today. So I appreciate it this time very much, and I hope people enjoyed hearing a little more about you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, guys. So that was interview 1. There's more to come. Thanks, LinkedIn. Have a good one.